What's going on, everyone? This is RFBM, Raising the Financial Bar with Mar. So yeah, it's good to see you guys. As always, it's love. I appreciate the support. Today, I have my friend here, Kevin. It's been so many years, and we're going to talk to some more practical things. We're going to talk about the nursing industry and his experience as a travel nurse. He'll also go around and talk about his background and his journey towards there. And yeah, but without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself, bro, and tell them about yourself.
I really don't know how to introduce myself, but as my friend said, my name is Kevin. I've been a registered nurse for about 4 years and some change. I've been in patient care for about 10 years. I was a CNA for 6 years, 4 years while in school. 4 years before transferring to Florida State, and then 2 years while I was at Florida State. So 6 years as CNA, 4 years as a nurse, 10 years. Born and raised in Florida, proud FSU alumni, go Noles. We're doing pretty good this year as far as football. We were pretty down for the past, I would say, 5 years though, but got a good feeling. We're 4-1 this year, so we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, man. Hey, and again, we used to talk about this offline, but it was like, you don't have to. But that's what happens, man. He's just Mr. Humble. But I really appreciate him coming through and talking about this because honestly, man, this is something long in the works for me. Like, I want to be able to not just be one of these platforms where they talk about different financial things and you do this and you flip this and do that. I'm more of a practical guy, and like I said, we didn't have the closest bond back when we met back in school, but I think it's understood that I'm a little bit more pessimistic with things, and I like to research certain things because you just go off of emotions. That's how you get led astray. But Kevin, honestly, like I always looked at Kevin as like a intellect, and I remember one time. We'll talk about it offline. Though we were at the conference, and I forgot something that this guy said, and had some type of discourse or whatever. But the way in which he carried himself is just, trust me, I'm just going off, and maybe my sample pool of people are different, but he knows how to articulate himself. And also with his background and experience, I know there's a lot of things that he can share, bring to the table here. So yeah, the first thing I want to talk about is talk to us a bit about your journey towards that goal of being a nurse. Like, what was the process? How was it first starting in, since considering you've been in the health industry more years as far as that relates just overall?
Well, before I get into that, I definitely want to say don't sell yourself short. You were also a really cool kid, and you still are too. Like, so I think that's how we bonded as well too. But sort of my journeys. So, journeys to like a certain goal or working towards something is not always linear. You don't come out of high school and then immediately go into college and get your degree, and then graduate, get a job, you buy a house, get married, da 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 da. It's not always linear. You're going to take different paths. My path was, I first my first foray into nursing and patient care was when I was about 20 years old. At the time, I was a couple of years out of high school and really hadn't decided what I wanted to do. So, I was just pretty much working, taking a couple of years off, i.e., sleeping on my parents' couch, just watching CSI all day. But when I was about 20, I first started volunteering at Moffitt Cancer Center, which is an amazing institution. It's affiliated with University of South Florida. Amazing doctors, amazing nurses, amazing staff, and amazing patients too. I first started out volunteering there, and I volunteered for about 6 months just to kind of get my foot in the door, because I figured I wanted to get into the healthcare field. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So my dad suggested, just try to get into a hospital, see if they can pay for your schooling, or if you can get a job to pay for your schooling. And then 6 months into it, I attained a position in environmental services, which is basically janitorial work. We clean the rooms, clean the restrooms, stuff like that. Just keep the hospital clean. And I did that for a year. And one day I just decided, you know what? definitely want to make a push towards patient care. So I decided, what's a good way to get my foot in the door of patient care? Decided, you know what, I think I'm going to get my CNA certification so I can, become a patient care tech. I got my CNA certification while I was, in housekeeping, and I got to know one of the managers, and he gave me a shot. I remember in the interview, I told him, point blank, it's like, hey, so I've never had any patient care experience, but if you give me a shot, I'm going to learn, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to, learn as much as I can. And I didn't think he was going to give me the job, but he ended up giving me the job. Later on, I asked him, a couple years down the road, why did you give me, the job when you had, other candidates with more experience? And he said, you know what, Kevin, when you were working in housekeeping, I noticed that you were always working hard. When everyone was slacking off, you were doing something always. So I've always prided myself on being a hard worker. I might not be the smartest person in the world, but I can work anyone under the table anytime. Yeah, so I worked on a cardiothoracic unit for about 4 years as a patient care tech. Basically, what we do, we take vitals, we get the patients cleaned up, which is huge in my opinion. You're coming out of surgery or you've been in the hospital for a couple of days, you just feel awful. Just the act of just getting a patient cleaned up, just getting their face washed, getting them a new gown, brushing their teeth will make them feel a lot better too, especially if you're not feeling so well. Taking vitals, hygiene, walking the patients, ambulating the patients, which is incredibly important, especially on like a cardiothoracic unit where you work on their lungs and you have to reintroduce that negative air pressure in their lungs to get their lungs fully inflated. They usually have like a chest tube, and that chest tube only comes out if their lungs fully inflate. So, ambulating the patient, sitting him up in the wheelchair, sitting him up in the chair, that all helps reintroduce that negative air pressure, so that the chest tube can get taken out and they can be discharged. And then just helping out the nurses too. I met some incredible patients there. I saw some things that I'm not gonna lie, that have kept me up at night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which which is kind of expected in patient care. But I've seen some absolute miracles. Amazing people pull through. I'm working with some amazing doctors who I've picked their brains, and it really got my curiosity at a young age about medicine. And work with some amazing staff, from the respiratory therapists to the phlebotomists to the lab workers to the nurses who still to this day I emulate and have shaped my career. Working with the nurses and also the nursing managers. While I was doing that, I got I went back and got my AA, which is why where I was a part of an organization called Black, Brown, and College Bound, which aided African American, Latino, and men of color to not only pursue their 2-year degree, but also to transfer after their 2-year degree, which is where we met. Had some amazing times there. Met some amazing people. Some of my bros I still keep contact with. We got to go to different. We got to go to different colleges. Went to different colleges. It was really fun. In fact, that's a reason why I went to Florida State. I had no intention of ever going to FSU. It was
Wow.
it was too far away from home, and I was like, I'd rather go to UF. But we went there and FAMU in
Oh
2015.
yeah.
And we were also supposed to go to UF, but the trip got canceled, so we were only going to US to FSU and
I
FAMU.
forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, it's a free trip. I don't care. And before I went, I got in contact with the admission personnel at FSU, and I was like, hey, can I take a quick kind of tour of the nursing school nursing? They're like, yeah, come on by. We went there, and I toured, and I went around campus, and I was like, you know what, I could sort of see myself coming here. And just an off chance, I submitted my my application to the College of Nursing. Didn't expect it, and I had like a 3 point. I think it was like a 3.8. I can't remember. It was like 6 years ago. GPA, nursing. Anyone will tell you, nursing school is incredibly
Super competitive.
super competitive to get into. So I was like, I'm going against people with 4.0s, and then March of 2016, I got accepted. So I was like, wow, this is awesome too. And I also got accepted in UF though, but I ultimately just chose to go to FSU. So after I graduated in 2015, 2016, transferred to Florida State. And I pursued my bachelor's degree, which is only 2 years since I did my first 2 years at 3 years or first 2 years at HCC. Yeah, left Moffitt Cancer Center, which is really hard because that was my home for literally 5 years. But you gotta sometimes you gotta leave your comfort zone to progress in what you want to do, which I did. And then while I was there, I worked a PRN job as a patient care tech on another cardiothoracic floor at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. And then I graduated in 2018. And my first job was in Atlanta on a cardiac step-down unit, interventional radiology, and also electrophysiology. So basically, just kind of the conduction of the heart. We got a lot of patients with arrhythmias, like I'm pretty sure you've heard of atrial fibrillation, which is you're hearing about that more often in like commercials now for like blood thinners and everything. And also patients with heart attacks.
Of course.
Yeah, they would have a cardiac cath, so we would get them prepared and also we would recover them afterwards. Also heart failure, which a lot of us know, either from family members or close relatives. So I worked there for a year, came back to Florida, came back home to just be closer to family, and also at the time my uncle had passed away up in Atlanta. So I needed to, kind of, be closer to family. I worked at Tampa General Hospital on another step down floor, but it was mostly, ICU step down. So we got a lot of patients from like trauma ICU, medical ICU, neuro ICU. And then that is when the pandemic happened in 2020. That was a very scary, weird time to be in healthcare time. We didn't know what was going to happen.
It's crazy that you mentioned that too, because before what I was going to do is like right around that time we were talking about that transition where you ended up completing further education in your degree at FSU, because this is the big thing too. What would you how would you, I guess the best way to say it is, tell me your experience expenses wise with nursing, and what is your perspective on like the fees for nursing overall based on maybe your peers or people you also know that have been in nursing school?
Well, it depends. You can either get your associates in nursing or you can get your bachelor's in nursing. Associates in nursing you get from a community college, which is a little bit more cost effective. I chose my BSN, and we talked about that nonlinear kind of journey to careers. My journey was while I was working, while I was pursuing my associates. I was actually working through school, so I was able to save and pay for my classes during those first 2 years, which definitely saved in the in the long run. First when I went to FSU, it was quite more expensive, and also I was living off campus too.
Right.
Yeah, I was able to take advantage of a lot of grants and scholarships, and also funding from the College of Nursing too, as well. That actually played a part in me choosing FSU over UF, though. I did have to take out some loans for cost of living, which we all have to do. Sometimes in school, but I was able to pay that off.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, if you go to a community college or a state college, it's a lot it's a lot cheaper. If you go to a private institution, a lot of private, colleges offer nursing programs. It's quite more expensive, but with nursing, you can pretty much do anything you want, so you can pay it off. You just have to sort of kind of, be smart with your money, though. But regardless where you go, though, it's a really great career, and you can, pay off pretty much anything. A lot of the hospitals now are increasing the salaries just because of, the cost of living. I'm sure, like, exponentially, though. But I will say that, once you get your degree, whether if you are an LPN, if you have your ADN or you have your BSN, you can pretty much do anything you want with your license. The sky's the limit. You don't have to you don't have to stick to patient care. You can do home health. You can do case management. You can do travel nursing. Of course, for travel nursing, they prefer you to have your RN or your BSN, or it's the same thing though. RN is RN though.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's the same way for for LPNs. You don't have to do bedside. You can work in a clinic. There's traveling everything. There's traveling LPNs, or traveling nurses. There are even traveling patient care techs.
Wow. Everyone's getting it in then.
I was looking at like one of the advertisements for one of them. I was like, geez, man, they're kind of making more than I was making staff. So so the sky's the limit. You just kind of have to just do your research.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you give me that perspective on that, Kevin, because I don't think people realize. Yeah, I will say, just from my personal experience and seeing, especially in underfunded programs where there's not as much money to distribute, and I feel like sometimes that affects the work, whether it's nurses, whether it's the techs, whether it's the doctors. Because basically, I was in a mental health center, but I was in a section that was specialized just for felons that were deemed incompetent to stand trial. Yeah, it was interesting for
Was it
sure.
called the forensic unit?
Yes, forensics, man.
I did my psych clinicals at a mental health hospital. It was actually a state-owned mental health facility. It was in the middle of Chattahoochee, which is about an hour, about 45 minutes to an hour, I would say, west of Tallahassee. It was it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, man. Definitely.
Yeah. I don't know how
You know what I'm saying then.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it.
Somebody that's one of those things where I think some of the things that you told me about, it's very thoughtful of you to be able to go through and assist a lot of these patients in ways some people would probably either be awkward with doing or maybe not want to do, whereas with me, I chose the risk of somebody might strangle me any day or tag me in the unit that I was in, because listen, we had because this is the thing too. Don't want to get on this too much because I have a couple other questions I want to ask you too. A lot of people within there, they were deemed that they had an issue, but I think that they were faking the system, so to say. Tell me a little bit about when, like, it was like, okay, travel nursing is what I want to do, because I seen the statistics here. It's also on NBC News, this article where it said that in January 2020, there were about 50,000 travel nurses in the U.S., or about 1.5% of the nation's registered nurses. And that was, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but Timothy, the vice president of research at a staffing industry analyst. And when I seen it, I'm like, man, I honestly thought it was more, because I'm on TikTok. I've been through Mill Talk, Nurse Talk. I'm on everything, man. And I'm like, wow, like, man, if I was a nurse, I'd be like, wow, this is the options are endless. Tell me how you got into that, man. And at what point were you like, I know that you're passionate about this as well, but tell me about the financial aspects of this too. Like, what, if it didn't allure you, but break down how it is with, travel nurse contracts, and how even add on to how when you go to these units, say you had a travel contract and I don't know, in Arkansas, and then the other nurse is like, man, he's getting paid way more than me coming over here. Just tell me all about it, man. Like, tell you the whole experience of being a travel nurse, getting into it, and the money and all.
Yeah, so I actually considered travel nursing. I would say early on in my career, like not even a couple months after starting my career, first up in Atlanta. There were a few travel nurses on my unit, and I talked to them about, hey, what's it like travel nursing? And they're like, I love it and everything. And I've always loved traveling too. Uh, just being in a different spot around the United States, that kind of appeals to me, and sort of that nomadic lifestyle. Not being tied down, having a home base, the ability to go anywhere you want. And also, at the time I was single, and, I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do. For travel nursing, you have to have about 18 to 24 months of experience in your given, I would say, specialty. So whether that might be med surge, tele, step down, which I have experience in, ICU or intensive care, at least have 18 to 24 months. So, I set a goal, saying, hey, 2 years and, me getting experience. After I get some experience, I'm gonna start travel nursing. That's an amazing travel nurse, and they were all cool too. I mean, they were all really cool. They just had like this kind of just aura around them, and just kind of this. I'm not gonna say I don't know if it's the real world, but they were just so nonchalant. They were just so cool. And then 2 years into me being a nurse, I was, during the start of the pandemic, I really wanted to go to New York, really wanted to go. But at the time, I had just started at a new facility, and I didn't want to leave before my year was up.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. But once I was a year into my new facility, I said, you know what, I'm going to travel. And actually, my one of my best friends on the unit, he started traveling before I did. And initially, I was going to stay at the hospital. I was going to try to transfer to the ICU. And then he started traveling and he told me about it. And I was like, you know what? I think this is the right time. At the time, like I said, I was single. I didn't have any huge expenses. I was staying with my parents at the time. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have, any kids or anything like that. Anything to tie me down to one location. So I said, you know what? I believe this is the perfect time for me to travel. So I started traveling January of 2021. My first assignment was at a facility in Western Maryland, about, I would say, an hour and 20 minutes away from DC, Hagerstown, which is near the West Virginia border and also the Pennsylvania border. Worked on a COVID unit. Definitely that was an experience. Definitely that was an experience. It was at what I thought at the time was going to be the tail end of COVID, because the vaccine just came out and everything, and we had all these treatments, and I was like, okay, so it's going to be a tail end of COVID. I couldn't be further from the truth, though. By the way, but I worked on a step down unit. So the patients, it was actually a mixed unit. It was ICU patients, also step down patients too as well. Lost a lot of really good people, unfortunately. Lost a lot of really, really good people. Like, this virus, it just hit us out of nowhere. So that was my first assignment. I was there for 5 months. We do 3-month contracts, but after you finish your 3-month contract, you can either decide to go to another facility, or go to you can either, like I said, you can either go to another facility, or you can extend. So I extended 2 additional months. So I was there for 5 months. Then my next assignment was at Wake Forest Baptist in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which I'm currently at right now. I was there for 6 months last year, from June to December. And then from there, I went to work at another facility at the University of Iowa. Don't ask me why I decided to go to Iowa in the dead of winter. My goodness. Yeah. I personally blame my own hubris, because I was like, you know what? I was in Maryland. It snowed. It was cold. I can deal with it. The cold in the Midwest is so much different than the cold in the East Coast. Like, at the time, in January, I went to visit my girlfriend in New York. It was actually colder in Iowa than it was in New York. It was negative 13 degrees in Cedar Rapids when I flew out to see her. Like, I was about to freeze. Yeah, I was about to freeze. I was there for 3 months, worked on a cardiac step down unit again. And then I decided to come back to Wake Forest. where I've been here since May. I will be stepping away from travel nursing in November. I'm actually, yeah. So yeah, I accepted a cardiovascular ICU position back in Florida. The plan is get a few years of experience, and then hopefully I want to get into CRNA or certified registered nurse anesthetist school and become a CRNA.
Tell me about the CRNA. What's the potential? Also, I know that this is another interest for you. And wow, I went from telling all travel nurses just to tell me that I'm stepping down. But peace, Mamba out.
I would, honestly, tell the truth, if I didn't have any plans to go to CRNA school, I would never go back to staff nursing. But like I said, unfortunately, with travel nursing, you have to have at least 18 and 24 months of experience. They're not going to give you like any training as a travel nurse in like a new unit, because once you go to a new facility, you only have about like a day of orientation, and then you have to hit the ground running. Ooh. So that's why you need to have the experiences before travel nursing. You got to know your stuff.
No, yeah. Absolutely. Man, hey, salute to you, bro. That's why, going back to when you said the non-linear way in which you went about it, and that's with life overall too. Heck, who knows? I might go back and maybe apply for something else. It's just how life is, and sometimes we go through certain things, and before we know it, we find another opportunity. And man, it's amazing to see how your demeanor is still the same. I'm sure certain things have changed in life, but your demeanor is still the same, man. So tell me about that. So with that addition of going to that school, what would you say it's a significant bump, or is it an exponential increase in revenue for you by going into there? Because I'm thinking the money side every time.
Yeah. Well, in my personal opinion, though, money is good, though, but you also want to deal with the experience, and it's something that I sort of had my eye on for a while, doing my research during nursing school, what I wanted to do. But the program is so rigorous at the time. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It's 3 years of schooling, and then you can't work while doing it, and it's almost like working a full-time job. You got to take call, like your first semester, during schooling, and it's pretty rigorous. But it's a very neat and compelling field to get into. As far as revenue, I'll let you do your own research, though, but it's definitely significant though.
Dope, man. Another thing, just adding on to that, is just, wow, this is so much, man. If you were a recruiter, I would have been like, sign me up. Let me join this mentorship program.
No, I'm horrible at trying to persuade people. Like,
well, when you say it like this, it sounds really good. Of course, don't let you get on your experiences, just your passion. They're like, oh man, this man ain't about this bag. He telling me about making these patients happy.
Well, you follow your passion, which my passion is helping people. The money will come through eventually.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. Especially in something that's so, I didn't even know. I guess it's just my ignorance, but I would think because something is so strongly needed, there wouldn't be any shortages. But they would find some way to compensate for that lack thereof, so to say. But I guess that's just what it is. I don't know, because I'm not experiencing it. I don't know if it's the retention rates. I don't know if it's just the duress, the stress you may go through. I don't know if it's the pay, but I'm always hearing things about hospitals needing more nurses, and well, I guess that could also add into the value of being a travel nurse. But before I close out with that travel, just circling back to the travel nurse area, like how are you able to jump from one contract to another? Did you have any like concerns of being able to get into another role? Because it sounds much easier when I'm watching TikTok, but then I see the reality, just like those tech jobs that they push on Instagram and TikTok, it's not sort of as easy. Tell me about the process and how do you maintain that?
So before you start travel nursing, you get with the agency and they find a job for you. They submit you for jobs. You just pretty much give them your experience, you complete your profile, you put your certifications, your degree, and stuff like that. And then you're paired up with a recruiter. How I am able to transition from facility to facility is having that tight, communication with, and also a closer relationship with your recruiter. They're the ones that are going to be submitting you for jobs. They're the ones that are going to tell you the rates. They're the ones that are going to like say, hey, you probably might want to extend at this facility because it looks like right now the job offers are kind of lowballing you, or there's not a lot of facilities calling for a lot of travel nurses. So yeah, definitely having that, kind of that constant communication with your recruiter is important. Any travel nurse will tell you probably one of the most stressful part about travel nursing. There are many stressful parts about travel nursing. You know, having the finding a new facility. But facilities are always looking for travel nurses though, so that's not too much of an issue.
All right, all right. Yeah, that's definitely, I feel like it's just wow, man, this is so much information that, just honestly, I guess you have to, like I said before, you have to get into it to really realize like the overall concept of this. So it's kind of like in Miro's life though. You just have to make sure you're in the right, you have the right support system behind you. It just feels good it's one thing to hear somebody say what they're going to do. It's another thing to see it actually happen and just this to continue to see you flourish. But yeah, man, that's beautiful. Just overall, I'm just happy just to see all of my friends continue to prosper and find their roles and find what makes them happy, and also find a career that is sustainable, that has income that can allow you to progress in life proficiently, because a lot of times it's it's not easy out here, and I'm not saying it's easy. You're still putting in work, but my point is you had to put in a certain amount of work to even get to the point where you can get a solid income like this in these type of fields and everything. So one thing I would say is just representation, even within our community. Like, I couldn't find the most recent statistics like of this year, but the percentages are really low, man, for medical professionals. And even then, with my girlfriend doing clinical, she tells me about how she said she felt she was in this child unit, and there was only one medical professional in there, and there wasn't even she wasn't even a black nurse or any nurse of color. So the entire unit is white, and she's told me uh, how underrepresented we are. And I'm like, man, that could take so many things, because of course we have all different experiences, but maybe their perceptions or on maybe pain tolerance or how somebody engages with their new infant baby and their can be misconstrued. And she was explaining that to me. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about it. But it's just thinking of in the grand scheme of things, before getting too deep, it's just like, what do you think? Because I know for a fact, of course, I can't bring up any percentages, that there's definitely got to be some kids that's just looking like, wow, I would love to be a professional like somebody like this. And people just, best way to say it, people seeing people that look like them is statistically, not even statistically, let's say I'm just going hypothetically, I'm assuming is going to, make more people want to get into those fields. So do you think there's a way in which we can, spread some awareness or try to get young children in programs where, or get an idea of wanting to become a nurse or wanting to become some sort of medical professional? Because not only is it needed because we're underrepresented, it also is a great way for them to have, a job that's going to pay them a livable wage. What would you say, if anything, you think, what's your insight on that?
I would definitely have to say community outreach.
Okay.
And also engagement. Just getting out there and then showing kids, especially kids of color, that, hey, he looks like me. I can be like him. there's a shortage throughout the medical field of of minorities, Black doctors, Black nurses, Black respiratory therapists, and what your girlfriend's going through right now with her clinicals, the same thing I'm going through, even to this day. I'm I wouldn't necessarily say I wouldn't say an anomaly though, but definitely it's very rare. In the healthcare field, especially in nursing too, seeing definitely a Black male nurse.
I was gonna say that. I was going to say that.
Yeah. But I think putting myself out there, showing that you can do what I'm doing right now. Like I said, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. You just have to be the most hardest working person and also advocate for yourself and not only patients too.
Yeah, so you would say work ethic, advocating, and of course, like you said, doing your research. Community outreach. I agree as well. With being in the Hope Scholars Program with the Black, Brown, and College Bound, and them working. Of course, they had some close connections with the 100 Black Men of America with the Collegiate 100 and everything. Like these type of things is what gets people, like even STEM, when we're at that conference and they mentioned STEM, and man, it's just, we just need more. It's just going to, I feel like not even like people saying just mention these things and trying to make it a race thing, but this is very impactful to me. This is in a sense a race thing for me, in the sense that I want people that look like me to be able to try to get more exposure to these things so they can work towards, you never know, this could be a passion. One of the last things I will say is like your experience as a nurse is, we've already talked about how there's plenty of routes. You can do your associates, LPN, or be an RN, get your BSN. There's just a lot of routes. There's a different, I heard there was like some type of hybrid tech type of nurse thing, which I don't even know how that works. Like there's so many different avenues that you can jump into. But before we close this out, Kevin, is there anything that you would like to share as a tip for somebody that wants to just jump into the medical industry, even specifically nursing, that's just curious and trying to see the process, like how can I do, or what can help me in my retention in the field so I don't give up, or like, what would you say?
So something I would definitely say to a person considering nursing, try to get some patient care experience. Know what you're getting yourself into. Like I was a tech for 6 years. It'll help with, you'll not only get to see things, that you'll be seeing as a nurse, but it'll also help with your bedside manner, knowing how to communicate with patients, knowing how to advocate for your patients. Definitely hard work. Definitely persistence. I can't tell you how many times, even in nursing school, and also through my prerequisites, where like I didn't do so hot on a test, or I didn't do so well on a paper. Just being persistent and like trying to do better. I remember in particular, there was this one time where I was in my microbiology class, which is one of the prerequisites that you have to take for nursing school. I bombed the test. And I was so devastated because I was like, I thought I studied hard for this. And I went to my professor and I was like, is there any advice that you can give me, so I don't do this again? She was like, just hit reset. Just forget about it. Hit reset. Learn from what you did wrong in studying last time and don't do it again. And I did that. And I totally aced the next 2 tests and passed the class. So let's see, another piece of advice. That's getting into nursing school. After becoming a nurse, I cannot stress enough about having a work-life balance. This job will definitely bring you to the edge. It will take you to the edge many, many times. That's just patient care in general. You have to know how to have that work-life balance. And what I mean is work stays at work. Okay. It's taken me a while to, sort of do that though. But it got to a certain point where I was so stressed out where I was like, you know what, Kevin, I have to learn how to have these boundaries or you're not going to last in patient. You're not going to last as a nurse. So having that work-life balance, take your breaks, take vacations. I know that, in this, in modern society that we're all about like this hustle, and having that hustle is good though, but you got to learn when to rest, when to have fun. Otherwise you're just going to be a working stiff, working, and you don't know how long we have on this earth. Okay. I could walk out of this house, in a couple of minutes and be dead the next. So having that work-life balance, having fun really will definitely help you. One of the things I do, as a nurse, I travel a lot. I've been to Italy, I've been to France, I've been to England, I've been to Portugal. It's been one of my passions of traveling, and that's why I'm also a travel nurse too. And also, as a nurse, a lot of, some people are like, oh, I bet you're so glad, you're out of school, you don't have to learn anymore. I'm like, medicine's always evolving. There are things that I was taught in nursing school. There are things that I did as like a new nurse that we no longer do now. So having that ability to adapt, to learn new things for patient care is definitely important. Trying to think of anything else. And to mention before, the money will come eventually. The money will come eventually. What you need to focus on as like a new nurse or being in the nursing profession is advocating for your patients, advocating for yourself, and having a love of helping people. Because if you don't, you're going to hate it. And then you're going to end up getting out of nursing, and then you're back at square one. So that's why I said, like, the money will come eventually, though.
Man, Kevin, I appreciate it, man. And I'm glad that I know certain parts of the segments I didn't really wasn't so stringent on things. I'm glad that you kind of jumped to what I was already thinking before you even said it. Where you describe nursing, then you're like, all right, now you're out of nursing. Now you're actually in the field. You've been hired, and you went on, so on and so forth. That's very valuable, man. Again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
so much content.
And then I think I forgot to answer one of your questions, as far as like travel nursing, when you had mentioned that, the number of travel nurses have exponentially gone up since the pandemic. It's dropping off a little bit now because of, the pandemic and the stress that it's brought on. As working in healthcare and patient care, a lot of people unfortunately are leaving the field. They're either leaving bedside nursing or leaving nursing, totally, which I can, completely understand. This pandemic has definitely, it has brought us to the brink of already a very fragile healthcare, field. But, I would say don't worry about like the number of travel nurses. Travel nursing will always be needed. And the compensation will always be there. It won't be as much as, during the pandemic. Right. That was unsustainable. That was unsustainable though. But the compensation will be there. And the compensation is there because we're coming from one part of the the country. Many of us have mortgages, many of us have rent we have to pay back home. We're going to another place where we have to find housing. And, it's inevitable that, staff nurses will talk about you. I would say just ignore them. You know what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. Don't let people keep you from what you want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate so much of the information that you provided. This is definitely, the quality. Even as always, to all our RFBM family, I appreciate the support. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a like, comment, subscribe. Again, really appreciate you, Kevin. Hope you hop on the show in the future if you have time. And again, this is RFBM, Raising the Financial Bar with Mar. Peace, love, blessings. Everybody take care.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
Because this world is such a gimme. everybody back off. You know, everybody's like taught that from school.
I don't come to bow, you know. I come to conquer.